All right, ready to dive into some ancient Egypt? Buckle up because we're going beyond the pyramids and mummies for this one. Today we're tackling a pharaoh who really shook things up. Akhenaten. Oh, he's a good one. Akhenaten is one of those pharaohs that keeps Egyptologists guessing even now. Right, like we all know the ancient Egypt greatest hits, but Akhenaten's reign, it throws a wrench in everything we think we know. Ditch traditions left and right, this guy. And with the amazing Sharri Plaza as our guide for this deep dive, talk about someone who knows their stuff. Get ready to have some assumptions challenged, folks. So, where do we even start with a pharaoh like this? Well, Akhenaten's reign was from 1353 to 1336 BC, smack dab in the middle of the 18th dynasty. He was the son of Amenhotep III, the very successful pharaoh in his own right. They maybe even ruled together for a time, actually. Ruling with your dad, I don't know if I want to share a palace, let alone a throne. But okay, he comes from this powerful dynasty, so what makes him flip the script so drastically? That's the $1 million question. I mean, at first he's doing the expected pharaoh thing, building projects, worshiping the traditional gods. Yeah, the classics. But then, out of nowhere, he makes a hard turn to a totally different belief system. He does all in on adding the sun god, completely. And it wasn't just adding one more god to the mix. Egypt already had a full pantheon. Amun was top dog, king of the gods. The Akhenaten decided, nope, Aten's the only god now. All other gods are out. Whoa, talk about power move. Can you imagine the reaction from the priests of the moon? They weren't exactly lacking in influence back then. Total upheaval. And honestly, to this day, no one's entirely sure why he did. Some scholars even think it might be one of the earliest forms of monotheism, which is a pretty huge deal for that time period. But here's the thing, this wasn't just about changing beliefs. It transformed Egyptian art too. Oh yeah, the Amarna art, right. It's so distinctive, even I could spot it, those elongated heads, the weird proportions of the bodies. You don't see that anywhere else in ancient Egypt. It's captivating. And a little creepy, if you ask me. We even have a possible clue to what inspired it. The great hymn to the Aten. It's this poem that some scholars believe Akhenaten wrote himself. It gives us a look into the core ideas of this new religion, and when you see the art through that lens, it makes a lot more sense. Instead of showing pharaohs as these powerful warriors, which is the usual, we get Akhenaten in these strangely intimate scenes with his family, like he's trying to represent this religious shift through the art itself. And then there's another layer to this artistic revolution, the way they show Nefertiti. Akhenaten's great royal wife. Trust me, I know Nefertiti, that bust. Iconic. But you're saying she was more than just a pretty face. Way more. The art shows her in positions of actual power, even smiting enemies right alongside Akhenaten. Some scholars even think they might have ruled as equals. Almost unheard of at the time. Okay, slow down, slow down. We've got a radical pharaoh, a powerful queen, a whole new religion, and art that looks like it's from another planet. This is a lot, and we're just getting started. Remember, Akhenaten didn't stop at changing the religion and art. He decided, hey, let's build a whole new capital city, dedicated to Aten, naturally. Akhetaten, known today as Amarna, right? That city in the middle of the desert, I don't know, seemed a little ambitious, even for a pharaoh. It wasn't the easiest location, that's for sure. Yet there are inscriptions that suggest the city wasn't just placed there. It was divinely chosen by Aten itself. Of course it was. Why am I even surprised? Leave it to Akhenaten to have the sun god on his speed dial for real estate advice. But seriously, what was the deal with that city? Picture this. A city unlike any other in Egypt, rising out of the desert sands. It was designed to be open to the sky, a total contrast to those traditional Egyptian temples, all enclosed and shadowy, and the speed they built it at. Mind blowing. Yeah. They used these smaller, uniform stone blocks, that's their goal, made construction so much faster. So he was in a hurry to get the sun-drenched city built. I wonder why. Makes you think, doesn't it? If it's pure religious zeal, or is there something else going on, something we're not quite seeing yet? See, this is why I love these deep dives. Just when you think you're getting a handle on things, another layer pops up. But while we're on the topic of Akhenaten's priorities, what about the actual ruling part of being pharaoh? Like, how is he running Egypt with all this other stuff going on? Well, that's where things get even more interesting. Remember those Amarna letters we mentioned? Hundreds of clay tablets. They give us this amazing insight into what was happening during his reign. They were basically his inbox, right? Messages from allies, officials, all that, pretty much. And here's the thing. Akhenaten seems oddly detached from the outside world. There were pleas for help, reports of unrest, all sorts of stuff. But his responses, let's just say he wasn't winning most engaged pharaoh awards. So he's hyper-focused on his reforms, almost oblivious to anything happening beyond his desert city. What was he thinking? deliberate isolation? Or was there something else going on that we're missing? That's exactly what we're going to explore in the next part of our deep dive. It's wild, right? It's like he built this perfect little world, this vision of Egypt with Aten at the center, and just figured, well, it's not, everything's going to fall into place now. But come on, this is ancient Egypt we're talking about. Surely it wasn't that simple. Did his vision die with him? Is that what happened? Oh, that's where the story takes a turn. And it's a turn worthy of like a whole scroll full of hieroglyphs. Imagine. Akhenaten dies. 17 years of radical change. Poof, gone. What happens to Egypt? Okay, you've definitely got my attention. Hit me with some ancient Egyptian drama. First, we've got this mysterious figure, Smenkhare. He pops up as a possible ruler. Maybe. A very short time, right after Akhenaten, figure. Doesn't ring a bell. Exactly. He's a total enigma. A ghost in the historical record. And get this. Some scholars even think that Nefertiti herself might have ruled for a bit. Possibly even took on a different name. Hold on, Nefertiti ruling. Okay, that's a power move. But wait, what of their kids? Weren't they in line for the throne somewhere? Well, that brings us to the most famous name of this whole era, Tutankhaten. Wait, as in King Tut, as in the one with all the gold, the one and only. And he was most likely Akhenaten's son. But here's the thing, this is where things do a complete 180. Remember all that religious upheaval Akhenaten unleashed? Yeah, Tutankhaten wants none of it. He switches back to the old gods, like a full reversal, full system reboot. He even changes his name to Tutankhamun, putting Amun right back in there, front and center. And this wasn't just some personal choice. This was a complete rejection of everything his father stood for, everything he tried to do. Talk about a slap in the face from beyond the grave, huh? But if Akhenaten's reforms were so unpopular, why go through the trouble of erasing him? Why not just, move on? That's the thing about power. It's not enough to just win, right? Yeah, sometimes you have to rewrite the rules of the game. Make sure you can keep winning. I see what you mean. Especially with a whole priesthood who probably didn't appreciate being sidelined for all those years. Exactly. And that's what we see happening. Akhenaten's successors. They were not messing around. This wasn't just, oh, let's change a few names here and there. I'm talking systematic dismantling of everything he built. Temples to Aten, torn down. Images of him, defaced, his name, stricken from monuments, king lists, everything. They wanted to pretend he never existed. Wow. Talk about holding a grudge. It's ironic though, isn't it? It's like by trying to erase him so completely, they actually made his story even more interesting, don't you think? I think just left his name on a few temples. Would we even be talking about him now? It's true. It's that old saying, right? The best way to get people to remember something is to try to make them forget it. Or something like that. Exactly. It's like a real life historical mystery hidden in plain sight. But how do we know we're getting the whole story? I mean, if they were able to erase so much, how can we be sure what's true about Akhenaten? But this is the thing, they weren't completely successful, were they? Because we had those Amara letters, those clay tablets. They weren't meant to be some historical record, just everyday correspondence. But they survived when all those fancy monuments and inscriptions didn't. It's like they say, right, the truth will out, and what a truth it tells. Because those letters, they give us a glimpse that goes beyond the official story, beyond what Akhenaten's successors wanted us to know. We get these little insights into his personality, what he cared about, how he saw the world. It really makes you wonder what else is out there, buried under the sand somewhere, just waiting to be found. That's the thing about studying someone like Akhenaten. Just when you think you've got him figured out, some new piece of evidence pops up, and suddenly you're back to square one. It's like he's still in control somehow, even after all these years, making sure we don't forget his name, even though they tried so hard to erase it. That's the enduring mystery of Akhenaten, and why he makes for such a good deep dive, I think. We have these pieces, the art, the city, the letters, the fact that they tried to erase him. But how do they all fit together? That's the question, isn't it? So where do we go from here? How do we reconcile these pieces of Akhenaten, the ones that seem to contradict each other? That's the challenge, isn't it? And it's what we'll tackle head on as we delve deeper into the enigma of Akhenaten, and the pharaoh who dared to be different. So we've covered a lot of ground here. This Akhenaten, religious revolutionary, art aficionado, desert city planner, and then, to top it all off, he almost gets erased from history completely. Talk about a pharaoh who knew how to make an impact. And yet here we are, thousands of years later, still talking about him. It's like he left us this giant puzzle, but half the pieces are missing. And we just can't resist trying to put it together. Everyone's got their theory, right? Was he a true believer? A power-hungry dictator, way ahead of his time? Maybe. All of the above. I think what gets me are the things we don't know, those gaps in the story, like those Amarna letters. We get this peek into his reign. There's like, yeah, why was he acting that way? Was he choosing to isolate himself? Was it some kind of idealism that just backfired? Or was it something else entirely? It's like we're playing historical Mad Libs, but we only had half the words. We've got attend, Akhenaten, Nefertiti. But those verbs, the why behind it all, still up in the air. Exactly. And that's what makes Akhenaten such a perfect deep dive topic. It's not about memorizing facts, it's about asking the big questions. How much can one person change the course of history? Do you ever really erase someone completely? And what would drive a person to go to such lengths to completely upend their world like that? It really changes how you see ancient Egypt too. We have this image of it as this unchanging, permanent thing. But Akhenaten, he throws a wrench in that, reminds us that even in those massive ancient systems, one person could still shake things up. And the fact that his successors went to such extremes to erase him, that just adds another layer, doesn't it? Speaks to the power of legacy, how we try to control the narrative even after we're gone. You could say he got the last laugh, in a way. They tried to silence him, but they just made sure his name would always be linked to this time of massive upheaval and change. Kind of a backhanded immortality, yeah. It reminds us history isn't just what gets written down. It's about who does the writing, what they choose to include, and sometimes what they choose to leave out. And those omissions, they can speak volumes. So as we wrap up our deep dive into Akhenaten, what's the takeaway for our listeners? What should they think about when they hear his name, when they see those images from ancient Egypt? I'd say this next time you see those pyramids, the sphinxes, all those iconic images, remember the people behind them. People with hopes and dreams and flaws, just like us. People like Akhenaten, who dared to question the rules, who, even when others tried to erase him, found a way to leave his mark on history. A good reminder that even amidst the sands of time, some stories just refuse to be buried. And it's the search for those stories, the piecing together of the fragments, the endless fascination of the unknown that makes studying history so rewarding. Couldn't have said it better myself. Keep asking those questions, folks. Keep exploring. Who knows what other mysteries you might uncover? Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.